Earlier today, Senate Democrats failed to advance the misleading named Right to IVF Act for the second time this year. Despite its name, this legislation is not really about IVF, as it would open a Pandora's box to measures that include human cloning, gene editing, the creation of three-parent embryos, the creation of human-animal chimeras, and other forms of human embryo experimentation with no pro-life protections. While this failed legislation can be viewed as a messaging bill meant to distract voters with elections approaching, that does not detract from the dangerous policies embedded in this legislation and the misleading messaging that is coming from our nation's leaders, like Chuck Schumer. Joining me now to discuss this is Senator James Lankford from Oklahoma. He serves on 4 Senate committees, including the Senate Homeland Security Committee and the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Senator Lankford, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to see you.
Tony, good to see you again as well.
All right, the Democrats introduced this legislation, the, quote, Right to IVF Act. Why was this deceptive?
Well, it's deceptive for a million reasons, and some of them you outlined there as well. But let me give you a couple others. This bill also takes over any state policy on IVF. You've got states like your home state of Louisiana that they have limitations on IVF to be able to make sure that it's well managed, that embryos aren't just being tossed and are protected. It would remove all of those state restrictions. It would also take away all conscience protections for anyone across the country dealing with this issue, no matter how it's done or what is done. So this is truly a really bad bill that they're going to just throw out there and to be able to say, okay, Trump is saying one thing about IVF, but all the Republicans are voting against it. They're secretly against IVF and every kind of procedure on that, which is absurd for them to be able to do. But this goes back to, if Americans aren't paying attention and they don't read the details of what these bills actually say, then they'll just miss it based on a headline.
So Schumer, in his comments, and let me just play clip 1 again.
Today, the Senate will hold a simple and pivotal vote on whether or not to take up once again the Right to IVF Act. If the Senate votes no today and strikes IVF protections down yet again, it will be further proof that Project 2025 is alive and well.
Okay. So first off, name one state in which IVF is not legal.
Not one state, not one territory. And again, this is the perception that the Democrats are trying to create across the nation. And it is very, very deceptive in what they're doing and flat out just a lie. It's just not true in what's actually happening. The other aspect of this is every single Democrat voted today for human cloning, for 3-parent families, for all this bizarre different methods of actually combining families together. They absolutely just voted for it today, just oblivious either to what was actually included or they actually agree with all that's included in this bill. Either one of them is a really bad foretaste of what they would plan to do for the future.
Some of which, as you just described, has actually been made illegal by Congress because of the experimentation and the destructive nature of it. I mean, this is the type of stuff that maybe the Nazis did in their use. Just because you have the technology does not mean you have the moral authority to do it. And
this
that's
is the kind of stuff that Communist China does in their experimentation even today. And so this is not who we are as Americans, nor should we be as Americans. We should speak out on this to say human life is precious, and we're going to respect the dignity of all human life.
All right, I want to switch gears here. The current situation in Israel, in the Middle East, very tenuous. We're coming up on 1 year of war. This week marked the 4th anniversary of the Abraham Accords, which normalized relations between Israel and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. You are the co-founder and co-chair of the Senate Abraham Accords Caucus. We were moving in a good direction when it came to stability and peace in the Middle East, but that's all been blown up.
Yeah, it's all been sidetracked. By the way, I remember distinctly that day of the signing of the Abraham Accords. I happened to be a guest at the White House. It was on the White House lawn that day. As a redhead, it was a hot afternoon in September, and my redhead self was getting out there getting sunburned. But it was such a historic day to know that no treaties had happened for so long, and then for the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain to sit down with Israel and to be able to sign documents of normalization what began after that was airline flights and trade and exchange of technology and all kinds of things began immediately on that, have continued. In fact, if it wasn't for the Abraham Accords and what happened during that time period, I'm convinced that there would be much wider bloodshed happening in the Middle East now. But because of those friends and those relationships that were starting early, it's been tamped down somewhat in the Middle East. And many people know that when Israel launched, or when Iran launched missiles at Israel several months ago, it was some of those nations that were actually stepping out and helping shoot down some of those rockets coming at Israel that would have been unheard of 5 or 10 years ago. So yes, we were in a good spot moving towards it. We added Morocco later to that agreement. We're continuing to be able to add as we continue to be able to focus on who else could be added for normalization. But that all seems to be all shot up with just the weakness that's been in this administration, their foreign policy.
Well, final question for you. Just have about 45 seconds left. What do we know about this mysterious activity in southern Lebanon where Hezbollah, many of their militants, 9 have been killed, thousands wounded by their old low-tech pagers simultaneously blowing up?
Well, we don't know a lot yet on it. Israel is not speaking on this, but it seems to be the communication method that they had to be able to function and to be able to cooperate with these low-tech pagers that were there. And all of them seem to have simultaneously blown up, which caused a lot of injuries to a lot of these Hezbollah operatives. These were key people that were actually helping lead and instruct the people that were under them. So for these key leaders across Hezbollah, many of them just were seriously injured today, and some of them lost their life.
Very interesting. And of course, that's usually the way the Israelis never talk about how or who. They just stand by and watch. Senator James Lankford, always great to see you. Thanks so much for stopping by today.
Good to see you again. Thanks for continuing to be able to speak out for values in the country.
Absolutely. We will continue to do so.